Hi, my name's Jay, and this is DIY Homebrew. So today I want to discuss with you a little bit more about gravity. Now, beer gravity is the measurement of sugar starting in your beer and ending in your beer. In terms of the scale that it's measured by, the starting scale for distilled water, completely clear, is 1.000. And that scale goes up in number by 1.001, 1.002, 010 for 10, 020, 20. And beer typically caps out around 1.050 at the beginning of the brew process. When you haven't put any yeast in, it's all fermentable and all sugar. Wine actually starts out more like 1.100, so that's up to 100. Now we're talking about a scale of 0 to 100, and that's a lot easier to visualize. Now, with beer, you want to have all of your fermentables start out about 1.050. That's the ideal situation. And to find out if that's the case, one, you should do a little math and start out with your recipe, figuring out if your starting ingredients should come out around there, so you're not surprised. And if it's a little low, you would add more fermentables, and that's a lot of tiny amount of math, really. Like you're really figuring out the ounces to put in of extra sugar or extra malt extract. And if you have too much, well, you want to put in some more water, but you of course don't want to overfill your fermenter. And so the best way to do that is to follow the recipes, of course, but also to have a tool at your disposal, like this. This is called a refractometer. This is used to measure, I believe, salinity, like salt in water. I think aquarium shops use this, but also you can measure sugar in the water. So inside here, you look here, you have a plate here, and you put a few drops of your wort, when it's cool enough, right on here. Close this, peek through the little telescope, and it should tell you what your starting gravity is for your beer, making sure that you're close to 1.050. And then, near the end of the fermentation process, you want to use this device again and make sure that your beer is, depending on the instructions, but usually down to 1.012, 0.15, something like that. This would tell you the yeast have eaten a ton of the sugar and turned it into alcohol. And there are websites with calculators that can help you formulate what that number is. Now, some people like a hydrometer. Hydrometers are long cylindrical tubes with a needle-like cylinder that pops in it, and that floats. And where that device floats inside the cylinder gives you a number of gravity. The problem with a hydrometer is it uses a lot of beer in the sampling process. And for 2-gallon batches, it's kind of a waste, because once you do it, you should dump it out so you don't put the wort back into your fermenter where it's been exposed and potentially ruin your entire batch. Whereas a refractometer, a couple of drops. Now, a hydrometer, in beer circles, people that brew beer, they usually say the hydrometer is the most accurate, and that may be, although you'd still want to calibrate your hydrometer. You'd still have to calibrate your refractometer. I'd mentioned before in the last video that I've used juice and distilled water to measure and change the calibration of my device by twisting this knob and adjusting the scale inside so that it reads 0 at distilled water, or in the case of orange juice, 9.6. There's two scales in here. One is called a Brix Scale and the other is called a gravity scale. Brix is equivalent to percentages. So when you're calibrating a refractometer, you take the orange juice, and in my case mine was 22 grams of sugar per 8 ounces of of the whole liquid, which comes out to 22 grams of sugar out of 224 grams of orange juice. Divide those two together and you get 9.6. So I put a sample of orange juice on my refractometer, and when I adjusted it so the Brix side of the measurement came out as 9.6, equivalent to percent. Then across from the Brix, when looking in at this thing, gave me the corresponding gravity. Now, some will tell you you do have to do some calculation with this online calculator that you can find. I think Northern Brewer has one. And that will give you a more defined and more accurate readout of what your starting and ending gravities really are with a refractometer, because there's a slight bit of adjustment in the process. Well, that's all well and good, and hydrometers may be great for being super duper exact. In fact, some people want to recreate their favorite beers and clone those beers. Personally, I just like to try the different experiences and see what I can create. So mostly I'm using my refractometer to tell me what my starting gravity is and make sure that I'm not too high, too low. I'm sort of in the range that I want to be in according to the recipe that I've used or made. And particularly at the end, I want to see that my gravity is plateaued, stop dropping, that it's at the lowest it'll go. And that means it's safe to bottle. That also typically means that it should be down in the 1.012, 0.15, and you wouldn't even need your starting gravity to find that out. But it is good to know when you start that you are in the right range to begin with, and that your yeast are going to flourish and have enough alcohol. If your starting gravity is 1.036, for instance, it's too low. You need more fermentable sugar in there in order to make an appropriate beer. Otherwise, by the time it's done, it's probably going to be like a 2% beer or something. It's not going to be very strong. The alcohol content's not going to be very high. Not that I want a super high alcohol level, not that I'm looking for an 11 or anything, but I'm looking for something in the 5 to 7 range myself. And when you're starting out, that's probably seems like the best bet. So I would recommend getting a refractometer. I would recommend looking into hydrometers, particularly if you graduate from the 2-gallon batches to the 5-gallon. It becomes useful. But really, 2 weeks in the fermenter, in proper temperature control, within an acceptable range with the yeast, should give you a good beer. And all things being equal. So, I hope that helps. I hope that illuminates what beer gravity is a little bit and what the purpose of a hydrometer and a refractometer are for. And in this video, understanding gravity helps to have context with a tool. So, again, as always, like, share, subscribe. It's DIY Homebrew. My name is Jay. You guys, have a good one.